Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for today's webinar, Best Practices for Closed Captioning and Broadcasting. My name is Regina Valinskaya, and I'm the Marketing Content Specialist here at EEG. Today, I will be joined by John Voorheis, EEG's Director of Sales. John has been with EEG for 4 years now and has extensive experience in technical sales. For the Q&A portion of the webinar, we will also be joined by Bill McLaughlin, the VP of Product Development. So for today's webinar, John will be going over who we are and what EEG does, the EEG solutions built for broadcasting, entertainment, media, and more. And he'll be going over the latest products and features. And during the webinar, if you have any questions about any of our solutions, you can enter those into the Q&A tool at the bottom of the Zoom window. At the end of the webinar, we will answer as many questions as we can. So that covers everything that I wanted to start us off with. So I'm now going to welcome John to kick us off with the webinar, Best Practices for Closed Captioning and Broadcasting. Welcome, John.
Hey, everybody. How are you? Thanks for joining us today. Hope everybody's staying well amidst, everything that's going on. So yeah, really great to be here. Really excited to talk a little bit with you all today about EEG's closed captioning solutions for broadcasting. A little bit of background on EEG. We were founded in the early 1980s, I think around 1982 or 83. Bill can probably give you an exact date at the end, but we were founded as electrical engineering group, as EEG, and that's where the EEG comes from. And, recently we've kind of started to use EEG video a little bit more, but we've been involved, really the key point here is we've been involved in providing accessibility solutions since our onset as a company back in the early 1980s. When I first started working here in 2016, I was really excited to learn that EEG had actually worked with PBS, with the public broadcasting system, to develop the 608 standard for data standard for North American closed captioning. So you really, you wouldn't have closed captioning if it weren't for EEG, would be one way of looking at that. But this has been in our DNA for a long time, in terms of video accessibility, closed captioning, data insertion. I mean, it's really what we do. So, really great that you all are here today. And just on this slide, this shows a couple of our kind of core competencies, some of which we'll get into today. ICAP, Alta. ICAP is EEG's proprietary protocol, for transporting audio to captioners and then receiving caption data in our encoding solutions. Right now, we caption about 5 million minutes a month live through that system. So, definitely some really extensive usage there, which is great. Alta is our encoding solution for IP video. Then you have Falcon, which we really aren't going to get into today, but that's a virtual RTMP encoder for streaming. Lexi's our automated captioning system, which we will talk about, which we also have a local on-prem version of. Lexi's cloud-based, as you can see from that cloud graphic. And then our AV610, which is a caption port. It's not actually technically an encoder. And if you want to learn more about that, next Tuesday at 2 p.m. would be a great time to tune into our next webinar when we will be talking about that. So, got to have a little bit of a cliffhanger here for closed captioning. So, moving on to the next slide here. The HD492 ICAP encoder. So this is really EEG's flagship product. It's a dual in, dual out SDI encoder with a decode output. This series of encoders has been around for, probably over 10 years. There's the HD480, the 490, then the 491, and then the 492 is the current model. So yeah, that's our flagship SDI encoder. It is an ICAP enabled unit. So how ICAP works is the encoder actually, the HD492 or any ICAP encoder actually extracts the audio from the video, sends it through an ICAP server that EEG maintains to a live captioner or our Lexi automated captioning service, and then the caption data is returned along that same pathway. There's a lot of benefits to that architecture. It was really designed with security in mind first and foremost, because when you're connecting, you're maintaining a static connection to EEG's cloud-based ICAP server. So that's just a static connection from your network and your encoder to the cloud server EEG maintains. And from there, it's connected to the caption agency. So if you need to change your captioner for contractual reasons, availability reasons, you might be working with multiple caption agencies, there's a whole slew of reasons why, you might need to do something like that. You're maintaining a static connection to that server. So it's really kind of just a set it and forget it scenario, which, there's so much changing every day that it's nice to have those sorts of options when they're available. 492 features a modem as well as a failover. We actually still have, you'd be surprised. There's quite a few people who do still use modems to connect to captioners, and that's okay. We understand. We definitely like to get you all on ICAP, and I can schedule some time to talk to any of you about the benefits of that, but it does offer that modem option, which many find to be useful as a failover, if not, a primary source of connectivity. Also have a serial RS-232 cable connection that can be used to source caption data from a teleprompter or from an on-site captioner. And you can also use, unencrypted plain text TCP IP telnet. So, that might be appropriate if you have a captioner somewhere on your internal network or something like that who wants to connect to the encoder. So those are all great options that the 492 has. It's also able to connect to Lexi, which is our automatic captioning service. Actually, the 491 and the 492 are both able to connect to Lexi. And there's a number of additional modules for the 492 that can be added on, that might allow you to record captions through the encoder or either through ICAP. So you can, download a caption file, really almost immediately after a broadcast. So you have that for repurposing the content. And we actually also, for those of you who might have a need for this, we have a free caption file conversion tool at eegcloud.tv. So if you don't already have an EEG Cloud account and you are using ICAP, that's a great way to get started right there with some of our cloud services such as Lexi. So if you do need to convert any caption files, that's something we have available at no cost at eegcloud.tv. So be sure to sign up for an account there if you have any sort of file conversion needs. So ICAP workflow integrations and advantages. I feel like I've kind of been talking about that all along, but we really have a robust network of ICAP captioners. There is a list available. If you type in, you can find it, EEG ICAP captioners, by keying that into Google. I do that all the time to send folks such as yourselves links to what captioners are part of the ICAP network. And that isn't an inclusive list, but it's a very good list. And one of the great advantages of ICAP is it's a service we provide at no cost, or it's a software download rather we provide at no cost to the captioners. So, that's one thing. If you have a captioner you're working with, you're really happy with, and you want to, introduce them to ICAP, it's no cost to them. And it's honestly really, they would just need to contact EEG to get that download. And it's really an email or a phone call they're happy to make, because if there's one thing I've learned, if there's anybody who loves ICAP, as much as broadcasters, it's the captioners, because it's a really straightforward process on their end. They can't get locked out. There's a monitor for broadcasters to see who's logged in at all time. There's logging as to who is transmitting data to the encoder. You can also have access, of course, to Lexi as a failover, or, as, a last minute resort, or even as a standalone solution. We can talk about all those options. We also offer through ICAP the ability to translate into multiple languages. And of course, as I was saying, the ability to retrieve caption files. And you can do that either through a CC record module we have available on the HD 492, which just records it in the encoder, all caption data going through it, and stores it, I believe, for 6 months. Or using our cloud services at EEG Cloud.tv, we have a feature known as CC Archive. You can just select a drop-down menu and pull a caption file from a time and date window. So that's super useful if you're looking to repurpose live content that's been sent on air, for rebroadcast, for streaming, for VOD purposes. You can just pull that caption file immediately. So that's really useful. So here are some of those features I've just mentioned. So what's another exciting feature of the 492 is, well, of course, you can do SCUDdy 104 bank insertion. So you can insert ad triggers, ad segmentation via this encoder without relying on a separate unit, which we do also offer. So, definitely ask about that if you have any SCUDdy insertion needs. But there is a module available for the 492, so you can really kind of keep your rack nice and clean and not take up too much space with this stuff. So that's really useful as well. And we also, as of NAB last year, and this was really exciting, I thought, and I think a lot of people did here at EEG, and hopefully you all did as well. We released the 2110 module for the HD 492. So what that does is essentially it allows you to insert VANC data into a parallel IP video workflow. So to an extent, it's really, almost future-proof the HD 492 encoder. Oops, sorry about that. It's future-proof the HD 492 encoder. And if you're working, primarily in SDI video, but you're starting to play around with IP video, and you might even be sending some of that out to air, or you want to see how captions would work with, your other gear, it's a great solution because you can have both. So that's something we're really excited about. Definitely have, some of those out in the field, and it's pretty exciting. This fall, kind of the big news is we are releasing 12G SDI 4K for the HD 492, and there are some options for doing that in the present form, and involve a frame sync and some things like that. That I was actually just discussing that earlier today. And if you have questions about how you can use a 492 in its existing form to caption in 4K, we'd be happy to answer those, or I think Bill could probably address that. But we're definitely releasing a full 4K version this autumn, so that's going to be very exciting. So, I think that's really a good segue in terms of talking about, 2110 and how that encoder's been future-proofed for IP video, to talk about, that transition from SDI to IP video. And, how we've done that is, of course, with our Alta software closed caption encoder. And one thing I think I've seen a lot of in 2020, we all have, is we've been seeing a lot more inquiries and a lot more deployments of Alta here at EEG. So it seems like, at long last, IP video is really starting to gain some more widespread adoption, which is definitely exciting, for all of us here and as an industry in general as we kind of move on to this next standard. So, it's definitely exciting to kind of see, amidst all the sort of chaos we've seen in 2020, it is nice to see that we're moving on to a next-gen video standard. It is, always nice to see progress in all its forms. So that's really exciting. But with Alta, I know Bill and some of our other folks here at EEG, they've been very active in the JT and M events in terms of the interops, as well as participating in SMPTE standards meetings and so on. So this is technology that we're very heavily invested in, and we're really interested in continuing ICAP into ICAP video. I fully anticipate Alta will be every bit the gold standard for closed caption encoding as the HD 492, and I'd like to think it already is for a lot of folks who are doing IP video. But more on the product itself. It does work with both MPEG transport stream and 2110. 2110. So here you have MPEG transports, the MPEG transport stream workflow, where it's an input into your Alta, and just like a hardware encoder, the compressed audio, the encrypted audio passes through ICAP to a transcription facility or to Lexi, and then the real-time captions go back where they're embedded as 708 captions, DVB teletext or DVB subtitles, and they go out for live broadcast. So Alta itself, it is a software product. We do offer it, for sale on servers that we configure, so that becomes something of a plug-and-play solution. It can also be installed on VM or on a cloud service provider. So, again, any questions around that would be great to direct to Bill towards the end, but we definitely have a full range of options for how you can deploy Alta into your IP video workflow. Some of the big advancements we've made here is, we've expanded the formats which we support with Alta, and we're always looking at supporting more formats. I was on a Slack discussion just, I think, yesterday or today. The days are running together a little bit for me these days, as I'm sure they are for all of you. But just recently this week, we were looking at, another video standard to support in Alta. So like I said, this is stuff that we're really engaged in terms of looking and improving these products. And, Bill and his team, it's really a great group we have here. And, we're constantly looking at improving these products and, what's next, which is great. I think for, not only us as an organization, but also for you, our customers and prospective customers. But, we've seen some growth in, the type of formats we support. We now support HEVC, embedded video, which is perceptibly lossless video, as I understand it. DVB subtitles, so support for the European closed caption subtitle standard, as well as SMPTE 2038. Aspen. And with Alta included in Alta is the ability to, of course, do SCSI 35 insertion. So again, included not even as an additional module, but with that license, you have the ability to do SCSI 35 insertion for ad triggers, ad segments, segmentation, etc. And here's this chart again, and this is for a 2110 workflow where, of course, your audio, your data, and your video streams are all coming in separately, and they're time synced through a P2P controller. In the center, you see the web interface where you can manage all your Alta channels. And again, this is sent, via the ICAP server, either to Lexi, to a transcription facility. The captions come back, they're embedded, and you have an output with ancillary caption data embedded. Now, you're probably thinking you've seen this chart 2 or 3 or 4 times. And it looks, kind of the same. And that's really the idea, is because that's what I've heard from a lot of customers, is that, EEG, it just works. It's just easy. You set it and forget it. And that's really the idea. There's certainly enough to worry about, especially these days. But there's certainly plenty to worry about, and you don't want closed captions to be one of them. And, I was at, a major private university here on the East Coast. It's actually in North Carolina. And somebody had said to me, with EEG, it just works. That's all I have to say about it, is it just works. And that's kind of the idea with ICAP, is that, you set it up, you set up your firewall, and it just works. Any changes to the captioners occur at that server level. So really, it just works, and that's the idea. We worry about closed captioning, so you don't have to. We've also, recently with an Alta network gateway, we have a server that we can ship configured with up to 10 channels of SMPTE 2110 audio, 211040 ancillary data simultaneously. So, a very dense solution. It's also integrated with the NMOS management API, so you can manage your Alta servers as well as your 2110 products from all different vendors. So, that's really huge in terms of simplicity for our users. And again, as I've been saying, simplicity is really what we all want from closed captions. This is just a setup screen of the Alta network gateway. And then here's the NMOS management API, in which you can manage all of your Alta channels. So, very convenient for our users in that regard, and flexible. So lots of options there. And in terms of flexibility, I don't really think any discussion of flexibility with closed captioning would be complete without talk about automated captioning. And I want to preface this by saying, I think live closed captioners, human closed captioners, cart transcriptionists, they continue to be the gold standard for closed captioning. But at the same time, they're not feasible for every situation. You may simply not have someone available. You may not be able to, have someone in the facility. Security clearance reasons, as might be the case with Lexy Local. It may not be you may not be under mandate to caption certain things, but your viewers, strongly prefer closed captions. So, to kind of meet that requirement of your viewers, that might not be like an FCC requirement. You might be looking for a captioning solution as well, but you might not want to necessarily budget that amount of operational expenditure. So there's a lot of scenarios where Lexi can come into play. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about that. Lexi's our automatic captioning service. It's definitely a really mature, robust solution. We released it at my first NAB here at EEG back in 2017, and I worked in our Brooklyn office, with about a dozen developers who live and breathe this stuff day in, day out, trying to improve Lexi and improving Lexi, not really trying. It's come so far in 3 years, really. But right now we support English, Spanish, and French. And that is, the three languages which are under some sort of mandate here in North America. And we stayed about a 90% accuracy level out of the box. And we really have, we have quite a few customers using this across all verticals, a lot of broadcasters, a lot of state, local governments, some e-learning, some corporate applications, a lot of really interesting use cases for ASR technology, which is exciting to see. And again, here's this workflow. And doesn't this look familiar? Because it's really, all a very similar workflow. The video source goes into the EEG encoder, the audio passes through ICAP to Lexi, comes back to the encoder, and then you have a captioned output. It's really simple. We try to make it that way. I think some of our support people might differ from my assessment, but nonetheless, we do try to make this a simple process, and I think we've largely been extremely successful in making captioning as simple as possible for you all. So we also have a Lexi Local solution. So, and this was really designed in response to requests for an on-prem solution, corporate applications where you might be discussing financials, product releases, or even like sensitive health data or something like that, just non-public data that there may be severe restrictions around in terms of it even passing over the cloud, no matter how secure the protocol. So that was what this was designed for, and Lexi Local is basically Lexi in a 1 RU unit, similar in form, almost identical in form to the HD 492, but it doesn't require internet connectivity to operate. We release updates that you would connect to the internet to download and then apply, to update the speech recognition, but it doesn't require connectivity to caption. You can actually you can connect multiple encoders to a single unit, and you can have multiple instances of Lexi Local on that single RU unit. But per instance of Lexi Local, we license it, on an unlimited use basis. So per instance of Lexi Local, you could really caption 24/7. So unlike it could in certain high usage scenarios, if you're captioning, probably in excess of 14 hours a day off the top of my head, but somewhere, you know, you're looking at using an automated solution and really extensively. From a cost perspective, Lexy Local could make sense for you because of that unmetered usage. So, you know, definitely shoot an email to sales@eegent.com if you have any questions about Lexy pricing. And this is fully compatible with, you know, of course, all EEG, all current EEG encoders. And as opposed to the cloud model, which, you know, in terms of usage, it's billed on a per hour basis, whereas Lexy Local is unlimited. So that's why I say Lexy Local could offer some cost benefits for those of you who might be doing some extensive live closed captioning. One of the really exciting features about Lexy is our topic models. You know, we'll talk about those. We'll talk a lot Lexi Vision, and then our ICAP Translate before we open this up to questions. But our topic models are really how you program Lexy with vocabulary. So you at one point you could actually enter a URL. I think you still can. We may have. We also allow you to upload lists of names, places, things like that, like just lists of text. And you can even upload individual words, you know, that may have, you know, may be particularly difficult to pronounce for, you know, either humans or, you know, speech recognition. Speech recognition, you know, Mississauga, Ontario is an example I always give. If there's anybody, anyone from our friends to the north in the audience. But the topic models are really useful in kind of getting that baseline of accuracy from 90% up to above 95% even. So, you know, it's a really powerful tool there, and to a large extent, you know, you can program different custom topic models for different content. You can only have one active at once, but you can have a news topic model, a sports topic model, etc. And those are all, you know, the types of folks that we work with using Lexy. As I think I said before, you know, we have, you know, well over 100 users at this point, you know, all happily using Lexy. So it's really exciting to, you know, kind of see how this technology has been able to improve accessibility in so many different scenarios. With Lexi Vision, it actually analyzes the on-screen graphics, so the captions don't obstruct those. You know, typically, you know, caption placement, I think, has been left in the hands of the captioner, but, you know, that's when the captioner is a human, so it's only natural that, you know, AI does the same thing. And I believe this can even be configured to not obstruct faces. So, you know, if you have people who are also relying on lip reading to supplement closed captioning, it can be very useful for them. You know, you may also have some advertisements on the bottom of your screen or something like that, like context of sports, when those eventually return, you know, or just graphics you don't want to obstruct. So definitely, you know, some really useful applications there. And then finally, we have ICAP Translate, which is really exciting because it allows you to caption in multiple languages by contextually analyzing sentences from ICAP and that caption data, and then translating it into another language. You know, this definitely works with English, French, Spanish, German, several others. Definitely can send you some information on that on request. If you have any questions about what languages we support with ICAP Translate, please type them into the text box. But yeah, it's an excellent that's an excellent service. And, you know, with the HD492, since you have those two video outputs, you can actually encode in two languages simultaneously. So you're using CC1 and CC2. So it's a great way to make use of that encoder as well, using ICAP Translate. So, you know, as I was saying, you know, again, with the features and advancements for Lexi automatic captioning, we're constantly working to update ASR models to improve, you know, the abilities therein, and you know, get that accuracy as high as possible. Like I said, 95% is very achievable, you know, under the right circumstances, and circumstances in which, you know, speech recognition can thrive. Clean, single speaker audio, minimal background noise, you know, people not arguing, you know, single speaker audio. So you can definitely get that accuracy percentage very, very high up there, even in excess of 95%. But that's just a matter of the custom topic models. And, you know, we put work into them so you can put work into them. You know, with that, you can really improve accuracy for that. So just to recap, you know, it's really an exciting time right now because we're at the intersection of AI captioning, IP video, and SDI with 492. You know, that can work with IP video as well as with SDI. We've introduced, you know, Alta is a very mature solution at this point. You know, it's deployed rather extensively, and, you know, seems like with each passing quarter, we're seeing more and more deployments of that, which is exciting. And finally, you know, Lexi and ICAP Translate, which leverage AI and speech recognition technology to deliver captions and accessibility in multiple languages. So definitely a really exciting time in broadcast, you know, and in closed captioning. So guys, I really appreciate you taking the time out on this Thursday to join us today to talk about best practices for closed captioning and broadcast. We will be giving another webinar next Tuesday at 2 p.m. So, you know, if you guys want to come check that out and see some applications for AV, so on, definitely would love to have you there. And at this point, I'd like to open up the forum for any questions. You know, thanks to Bill and Regina for joining me today. Thank you, Regina, for organizing this.
Of course.
Bill, I know you'd love to take any questions now. So, you know, I'd like to open up the floor. And thanks so much, everybody. It's been really a pleasure speaking with you all today. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sean. Yeah, so we've now reached the Q&A portion of the webinar. So if you have any questions and you haven't already done so, you can enter those into the Q&A tool at the bottom of your Zoom window. So the first question that we have here is, can Alta encode into an HLS stream with multiple bit rates?
Yeah, well, John disappeared. I guess I'm answering this one, so Alta basically will work on a transport stream that is a single transport stream. So typically you would insert the captioning in H.264 in Alta, and you would do that upstream of components that we're going to essentially do things like live segmentation of the stream for HLS delivery or for multiple bit rates. Now, if you have transport streams that show the same content already in multiple bit rates, and that's how they're being delivered for captioning, what you can do is you can set up multiple Alta channels. Each one of them is going to have an independent input stream and an independent output stream, and you can tie these encoders together with ICAP. So you can have a multi-encoder ICAP access code, and that'll deliver the same captions into, you know, all of the different bit rate streams. So to answer the question, you can do that. It requires multiple Alta channel licenses for each bit rate, and most commonly the bit rate conversion is done downstream of the captioning. But if you have multiple streams that need captioning of different bit rates, you can do that with a single source of captioning and with multiple Alta channels.
Someone is asking if the webinar will be available afterwards. So yes, this webinar is being recorded right now. Within the next few days, everybody who registered for the webinar will receive an email once the recording is available for viewing. Carl had actually commended John on the quote, "We worry about closed captioning so you don't have to," which I think is great to share how our solutions resonate with customers. But Carl's also asking to tell everyone more about Lexi Vision.
Yeah, so Lexi Vision uses the ICAP video feature, which most of the newer encoders have an ability to do. and it uploads a relatively low resolution, low frame rate copy of the video signal into the encoder to ICAP. And that's been being used in some installations for caption positioning, by human captioners for probably 5 years. That feature has been out. With Lexi Vision, we're actually able to use image recognition AI that finds places on the screen where there's text graphics, where there's a lot of busy action on the screen, where kind of the center of the action with people's faces is. And these entities are recognized by the image recognition, and a caption position is chosen to avoid these. And so it will go either to the bottom or the top of the screen, and can, hedge in a little bit to the left or cut off a little earlier on the right to avoid your on-screen graphics, and to do that dynamically. Because historically with most systems, with automatic captioning or the teleprompter, or even with a lot of human captioners who don't have access to a video feed, the traditional approach has been to say, we're going to choose all at the top or all at the bottom, and we're just going to do that all the time, and we're going to hope that that remains a good position for the captioning all of the time, on all of the content. But sometimes the content isn't produced in such a way that one position is the best all of the time, and so the dynamic positioning kind of helps you avoid needing to make that choice. And it's important, because that's actually, right up there with accuracy and with latency of captioning. That's in the FCC requirements for live captioning, that the captioning be put in a position where it obstructs as little of the important on-screen action as possible. So, that's a kind of is a first order problem. And with Lexi Vision, we have, I think, kind of the best solution that's out there to actually manage that without asking anything new of the graphics production. We're not saying, oh, you have to do the graphics a certain way. The captioning can actually adapt to what you want to do with the graphics.
And we just have a follow-up question from Carl too, asking how to install and activate Lexi Vision. So if you can just speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, so there's 2 different steps basically on the assuming we're talking about, say, a 492 and SDI encoder. On the ICAP page on the config site, there is a setting for providing permission to upload the video in ICAP. So you have to make sure that that is checked on each individual encoder that you're using. And then once that's checked on the encoder, you can also check use Lexi Vision when you're starting a Lexi job, either on the startup page at eegcloud.tv on the website, or in your encoder if you're automating the jobs from, say, a GPI on the encoder. Then the job settings are also located in the Lexi tab on that encoder. So essentially, for your preset for a certain GPI, you'd tell it to use Lexi Vision feature. And if the encoder hasn't been, this feature is fairly new, several months. So if the encoder hasn't been on a recent build of software in that time, you may have to upgrade the software build on the encoder to see the new options. But with an updated encoder, they should all just be there.
We have a couple questions from Gregory about Lexy Local. First asking if Lexy Local is a separate appliance, and if so, if they can add it to the 492s that they have installed to bring captioning inside the organization versus to ICAP.
Yes and yes.
All right. And
Bill,
also,
Bill, you can elaborate on that if you like, but no, that's
yeah,
double
absolutely.
affirmative.
It's a standalone appliance that can support up to 10 different encoders attached to the same server. It basically it's a 1 rack unit server with a little LCD display to set up the basic IP settings and start communicating with it. So it, in kind of form factor, it's very similar to another one of the encoders. And the only real like kind of asterisk or thing to understand with if you have existing encoders on ICAP and being interested in using them with Lexi Local, is that the ICAP resource in the encoder needs to be pointed at a given time either to the internal Lexi Local server or to ICAP out on the cloud. So if you were ever going to be switching between these two operational modes, you do have to do a little bit of reconfiguration on the encoder to switch between the modes. So an advantage of Lexi in the cloud is that you can interchange Lexi on the cloud with human captioners on the cloud, and you can kind of interchange that just on any kind of a daily schedule without making configuration changes from one source to the other in any kind of manual way. And with Lexi Local, if you ever did want to have the encoders also be on the cloud, that's a configuration change. So, operationally, a few minutes need to be allocated for that. But if you were going with all Lexi Local, then really, you can just take your existing encoder and redirect it there permanently and be set.
So follow-up question on that, Bill, for our audience. How many encoders could you have simultaneous licensing permitting? I'll add that as a caveat. Could you have captioning from one Lexi Local server? So if you had simultaneous, so if I wanted to have multiple video feeds.
For simultaneous encoder usage. So if you were going to use, if you had two encoders, using them in an alternating fashion on Lexi Local would be available for the base price. If you want to use them both at the same time on Lexi Local, there's an additional channel worth of licensing on that.
But you could use up to 10 simultaneously from one Lexi Local server,
you don't have
from one piece of hardware if you purchase the appropriate licensing. And I just think that's good to know for those in the audience who might be, managing more widespread deployments, with a single Lexi Local server, with the appropriate licensing, you caption up to 10 simultaneously.
Exactly, and it's called local, but really, by local, you just need to understand that it's not a cloud service, it's within the customer's enterprise network. So, for example, there's nothing that would be stopping you from connecting two different offices that are already connected through a VPN or a wide area network. There's nothing stopping you from using the same Lexi Local server in multiple physical locations, but they just need to be connected internally by the customer supplied networking. It's not a hosted cloud service the way, say, a Falcon or ICAP or Lexi on the cloud is a hosted service.
Exactly. I just thought that might be useful for some folks to know. So thank you.
So we have a comment from Alan saying that that they're looking for looking to live stream in Spanish. So could you speak to live streaming with Lexi, even though that we'll be talking a lot more about live streaming on Tuesday?
Well, I mean, it's Lexi does do Spanish. I mean, we can either, that again, Lexi would be any case where the spoken language of the audio track is the same as the language you want for captioning. So assuming that it's, it's a Spanish audio track and you want Spanish, you just select Spanish when starting the Lexi job and you're good to go. The Spanish appears as the primary language captioning. ICAP Translate that John mentioned is kind of the companion product to Lexi for a case where you want captioning in a language that is not the spoken language of the program, because Lexi is effectively audio to captions, whereas Translate is captions in one language to captions in another language. So it would be possible, for example, to, let's say you have a spoken program in Spanish, you could use Lexi to create Spanish captions on Caption Service 1, and then even additionally, you could use Translate to also receive translated English captions on Caption Service 2. So, the translated English captions at that point are derivative of the Spanish captions. There'll be another second or two behind, but basically you could, that's how you would get multiple languages of text from a single spoken language would be to cascade the products. And yeah, so you can definitely get the Spanish to Spanish on that. Yeah, if was there a question in there about streaming or?
Yeah, I mean, all it was just a comment about I'm looking at a live Spanish stream.
Yeah, so basically it is live and it is in Spanish, as far as stream goes, it's just basically for SDI you would use something like the 492 product, and if it was RTMP, I'd probably usually recommend the Falcon product, and something like an MPEG transport stream, that would be the Alta product as far as actually inserting the captions in the video.
Right. Someone's also asking about the workflow between ICAP Local and Lexi Local, and asking if you would need both of them.
So ICAP Local is not really a separate product. It's really it's a feature subset of the Lexi Local product. And what ICAP Local really refers to is the capability that you could have human captioners or any type of third-party human or automatic system that uses ICAP. You can use ICAP across a local network using this Lexi Local server. So the Lexi Local server replaces using public cloud servers hosted and maintained by EEG to connect to your caption agency, and you can basically have a captioner. Let's say you have an office in California, and you have an office in New York. You can have a captioner who's inside your network at the office in California, and they can use the Lexi Local system as their ICAP server to receive audio from a meeting that's happening in the New York office and send the captions back. So ICAP Local is just essentially the ability to use the Lexi Local product as a server for transcription sources that are not Lexi automatic.
Okay, thank you. And then could you please talk about how Lexi functions in live sporting event scenarios, and then maybe talk about in what scenarios you think that Lexi is the most accurate?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, sporting events, it can vary a lot how the event is mic'd and kind of what the style of the commenter is, what number of commenters they have. Basically, sometimes a sports stream has a number of different, what I'd call, degrees of difficulty beyond, the optimal automatic captioning performance, because, in kind of your worst case scenario, you're dealing with a mix that has a lot of crowd noise and, squeaking sneakers or race car engines, so a lot of background noise, and you're potentially dealing with multiple announcers who, might, depending on the style of the broadcast, they might speak over each other a lot. They might get extremely excited and, kind of start shouting. They might use a lot of
accented speech.
They might use a lot of jargon. They might be famous athletes speaking English as a second language from other countries. So there can sometimes be a lot of issues cascading on top of each other that make that a challenging program. That being said, when fewer of those things are a problem, it really can do quite well in sports. For example, you're probably going to get a better out of the box result on golf than you are on NASCAR. Just because of the fact that you have a relatively the announcers tend to have a calmer performance. There tends to be less background noise. Those things are all factors. And, so one thing that can sometimes be done, depending on where you're sitting in the production chain, is you can improve your results a lot if you're able to feed isolation microphones from the commenters into the system rather than the fully mixed program, including arena sounds. So, so that's definitely something that can be a challenge if you're receiving a completely packaged sports program from around the world, say. But when you have control over the production, that can be a way to get much better automatic captioning results.
I will say we have had some very good success captioning live sports. One of our pretty significant users of Lexi, and there's several who use it for live sports, but one kind of uses it exclusively. It's exclusively sports content that they do, and they use Lexi quite extensively. And they seem to have very favorable results.
Yeah,
so
and sports itself is a broad category. I mean, everything from live games of different kinds to, to news and coaches shows and press conferences. So
yeah, and they do all of the above. So we've definitely had some really good success stories with sports, but a lot of it, as Bill said, depends on, the microphone, and also, using custom topic models for jargon and player names and things like that. That can really help you kind of improve that baseline accuracy.
And then can you switch back and forth between Lexi Local and Lexi via the cloud easily?
Yeah, well, like I was saying about that, it doesn't switch between those two automatically. Is it easy? It's relatively easy. You need to change the IP address field in the ICAP server that the encoder is pointing to. You can do that using some HTTP API automation or through a point and click on the browser. So it's I think it's fair to say it's easy. If you are doing programs kind of like straight back to back or something every day, but I mean, you probably, it's one more thing to be moving around. And I think in that case, that can be a strong argument for using Lexi on the cloud instead, because at that point you have no moving parts in terms of the encoder needing to connect to different IP services. But, it can be done.
Is Lexi Local compatible with other makes of caption encoders?
It's compatible with some. They have to use the ICAP protocol. So, for example, there's some automation kind of channel in a box systems. Imagine Versio is probably the one we work with most frequently that has a built-in ICAP driver. So anything like that is compatible with Lexi Local. For older units that only support a telnet connection in or a telnet modem connection, there are sold separately proxy products that can connect those units to ICAP. A lot of the units that are out there that have they have a telnet input ability, and they don't have an audio output ability. So being that you need to also get audio associated with the channel into Lexi, that's why with an encoder that doesn't talk ICAP, you need a converter card that both will take in a source of audio to associate with the channel and then will interface the captions with the terminal encoder.
Okay, and any plans for allowing us to run virtualized Lexi Local?
Maybe. I think that's something we've gotten some requests from. I mean, when we ship the server, that allows us to kind of put together something that works right out of the box, is easy to configure. We ship VM-based products for our Alta systems, and that definitely helps a lot of customers with very efficient workflows once they get it running. But the setup on the virtual machines, as I'll tell you, it's generally a lot more complicated than when a turnkey system is shipped. So that's a factor as we build these things out. But I do think that having a fully virtualized version of that is something that'll definitely make sense for some customers and is probably going to come down the pipe at some point.
All right. Well, that looks like that's all the time that we have for questions. Thank you all for your great questions. And that concludes best practices for closed captioning and broadcasting. I'd like to thank you all for joining us here today, and take care.
Hey, thanks, guys. If you have any questions, just email me, John, John, V as in Victor, at eegent.com, or sales@eegent.com. If you have any questions about pricing or just any other technical questions we didn't get to today, we're always here to help. Shoot us an email, give us a call. We're here. Thanks, guys.